"She wants you by the kitchen, ma'am." I blinked, thinking I must have heard him wrong. The kid couldn't have been more than 19, dressed in black and white with a catering badge clipped to his apron. He shifted from foot to foot, holding a clipboard like a shield. "I'm sorry," I asked, adjusting the sleeve of my dress. It was soft peach, hand-pressed the night before. The kind of color that whispers dignity without trying too hard. The boy glanced toward the double doors that swung open to the reception hall. "The bride. She said to seat you near the service area. Just until things get started. Until things get started." I swallowed hard. My heels clicked softly against the tile as I followed him down the hallway, past the waitstaff polishing silver trays, past the boxes of linens marked Emily and Daniel in looping black marker, toward the room where the music was already warming up. The chair waited for me like an afterthought. No name card, no ribbon. Just a folding seat tucked near the swinging door, a stack of used trays on one side, and a cart with a squeaky wheel on the other. This must be a mistake, I said more to myself than to anyone else. But the boy just offered a sheepish smile and disappeared back into the kitchen. I stood there for a few seconds, unsure whether to sit or march right through those doors and ask my son what was going on. But then I heard his laugh. Daniel's deep, familiar laugh floating through the crack between the doors. A laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in years. I stepped closer, just enough to see through. There he was, my son, adjusting his cufflinks, flashing that confident grin that used to melt me when he was 6 and broke the vase with his toy truck. Emily stood beside him, arm looped through his. Her mother hovered nearby, touching up her lipstick in a compact mirror. A photographer snapped shots of them beneath a string of glowing bulbs. My hands curled around the edge of the tray cart. I had written the check for this venue. I had signed off on the catering deposit. When Emily wanted the upgraded linens and custom cocktail menu, I didn't flinch. I thought this day would feel like something shared. A moment that belonged to both of us. Instead, I was behind a swinging door, with shrimp cocktail and stainless steel bins of gravy. A server pushed past me with a tray of champagne. She didn't make eye contact. I lowered myself into the chair. It creaked beneath me. The kitchen's heat pressed against my back ovens running full force. The smell of garlic and oil curled in the air. I could hear Emily's mother giving instructions to someone, probably about the seating chart. My name wouldn't be on it. I knew that now. I looked down at my dress. The chiffon fluttered slightly around my knees. I'd spent hours choosing it. Something light, something elegant. I'd even had my hair done that morning. Not because I expected to be the center of attention, but because I thought I'd matter. I straightened my spine and faced forward, but the swinging door creaked open again. Laughter poured through along with a burst of music. I caught sight of Daniel one more time, smiling at Emily's father, like he'd raised him. Like I hadn't worked double shifts to pay for his braces. Like I hadn't stayed up nights when he had fevers so high I thought I might lose him. I pressed a napkin to my mouth, just to look composed. The door swung shut again, and I was alone. The only sound was the faint rattle of a cartwheel and the clink of glassware in the sink. Somewhere beyond the wall, someone made a toast. Not to me. I folded my hands tightly in my lap. The plate in front of me had gone cold. There was no welcome, no glance, no gesture. Just a folding chair shoved against a side wall, a flimsy paper napkin tossed over the seat like an afterthought. I stood there for a moment, unsure if I was expected to sit or wait for someone to tell me it was all a misunderstanding. But no one came. Only the sound of trays clattering behind the swinging doors and the scent of garlic and overcooked marinara filling the air. I finally sat down. The chair wobbled one leg short. My dress, soft mauve chiffon with delicate beadwork along the sleeves, sank awkwardly into the metal ridges. I had picked it weeks ago, thinking it would catch the light when I danced with my son. Instead, It caught the steam from the kitchen and clung to my back like wet paper. My makeup, carefully applied after 3 hours in a stylist's chair, felt like it was melting off. Still, I sat there, back straight, ankles crossed, waiting for something to shift. It didn't. A plate appeared without warning. Dry chicken breast, mashed potatoes with a skin forming, and limp green beans drowned in butter. No one looked me in the eye when they dropped it off. No one called me by name. I was just ma'am, maybe even a mistake. I hadn't eaten since breakfast, but the food on my plate might as well have been cardboard. I picked at it each bite, a reminder that I wasn't expected to enjoy this, just to stay out of sight. Through the crack in the swinging door, I caught slivers of the reception. Soft gold lights, white roses. The band playing something upbeat while cameras flashed. Laughter drifted in and out, careless and bright. I heard Emily's voice clear, confident, as she introduced the first toast. Her mother, Susan, stepped up. I knew her voice instantly. I remembered it from our few interactions, syrupy, performative, always 2 beats too loud. "We are so grateful," she said to everyone who made this day possible. And to Daniel, our sweet, wonderful Daniel, welcome to the family. Applause. No mention of me, no thank you, not even a nod. I sat perfectly still. It wasn't just the seating arrangement. It wasn't the missing name card or the chipped plate. It was all of it, the accumulation of decisions that quietly removed me from the picture. They didn't want me in the photos. They didn't want me on the mic. They didn't even want me near the tables. I had become the background, the budget, the woman who made it all happen, and who now sat beside a stack of used catering trays like she was lucky to be there at all. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for the water glass. Lukewarm. Plastic. I stared into it like it might tell me something I didn't already know. A waiter passed by, barely glancing my way. I opened my mouth to ask anything, really, but shut it again. What would I say? That I helped raise this boy alone, that I worked double shifts so he wouldn't have to wear secondhand clothes, that I skipped meals so he could go on field trips with a packed lunch like everyone else. No, not here, not now. The chicken on my plate had gone cold. I placed my fork down gently and folded my napkin on my lap, even though no one could see, even though no one was looking. Then the music changed, and I knew, without seeing, that the first dance had begun. This time, I saw the first dance begin. I unfolded the program they handed me at the church, the elegant one printed on thick cream cardstock. The ink shimmered faintly under the dim kitchen lights. I ran my finger down each line, past the names, the titles, the order of events. Her father walked her down the aisle. Her mother gave the welcome speech. The readings were done by her cousins, her college roommate. The toasts, the dances, the tributes, all theirs. Not a single mention of me. Not even a courtesy line with gratitude to the groom's mother. Nothing. As though I hadn't spent the last year coordinating, calculating, cutting corners just to make this day what they wanted. As though I hadn't drained nearly every account I had to give Daniel a wedding that looked like it came out of a bridal magazine. The mother-son dance was gone, quietly pulled from the program. A week ago, supposedly, because it didn't fit the flow. I hadn't argued. I didn't want to be the mother who made things uncomfortable. But now, sitting alone beside a stack of shrimp trays, I saw it for what it was, an erasure. The band started something slow. Through the swinging door, I could just make out the edge of the dance floor. Her dress sparkled under the chandelier. Daniel held her hand, his face soft and smiling. He swayed gently, as if the whole world had stopped just for this moment. I remembered dancing with him in the living room when he was 4, standing on my feet, arms tight around my legs as I spun him in circles. He used to laugh so hard he'd hiccup. That boy wasn't here tonight. That boy wouldn't have let me sit in the kitchen. Someone brought me cake, vanilla with raspberry filling. 5 tiers tall, decorated with gold leaf and edible pearls. I had paid extra for that design. Emily called it elevated. I had nodded, agreed. She wanted it perfect, and I wanted her to have it. Because it was Daniel's day, and I thought making her happy meant keeping him close. Now the cake sat on a plastic plate in my lap, a fork sticking out of it, like it had been served to a stranger. I stared at it, numb. I hate raspberry. Always have, but I smiled when she chose it. Smiled when she talked about signature cocktails, custom signage chandeliers instead of string lights. I let the florist talk me into an upgrade. Let the DJ add another hour, agreed to swap out the community center for a rustic barn with a better aesthetic. I did all of it, paid for all of it, and somehow I became invisible in the process. The laughter from the hall got louder. A toast, maybe? Her father, again, voice booming. I imagined him holding up a glass saying something rehearsed and charming. Everyone smiling, cameras flashing. I wondered how many photos would be taken tonight of her side of the family, of the happy couple of the bridal party, and how few would include me, if any. And if they did, would I even recognize the woman in the photo? A background figure tucked into the edges, blurred by movement, shadowed by joy that wasn't hers. Not a proud mother, not a partner in planning, just a shadow by the kitchen door. I set the cake aside without tasting it. My hands felt steady now. Too steady. The kind of calm that follows a storm you didn't know had already passed. I pulled out my phone and opened the wedding budget spreadsheet. Every line item was still there, meticulous, exact. I scrolled through them, past the cake, the band, the bar. And then I saw them 2 charges that didn't belong. I couldn't sleep. The hotel room was too quiet, too stiff. I sat on top of the covers in my mauve chiffon dress, hair still pinned, makeup smudged from the heat of the kitchen. I didn't bother to shower. The scent of chicken grease oven heat and someone else's celebration clung to me like a second skin. I turned on the lamp and picked up my tablet. The wedding budget spreadsheet was still open. I had gone over it for the 100th time earlier that week, checked off every payment, every due date. But tonight, my fingers moved differently. Not with the rhythm of planning, with suspicion. I opened the banking app. Recent activity. There, nestled between the florist and the final DJ deposit, were 2 charges I didn't recognize. August 3rd, Maison du Vin, Wauer 2700, August 4th. The Copper Room, Wauer 364 My stomach sank. I tapped to expand the details. The first was a wine bar, a tasting event. The second, an upscale restaurant. I knew the name. That was where they held the rehearsal dinner. I hadn't been involved in planning, that only paid the portion they told me about. These charges weren't on the master invoice. These were extra. I checked the card. It was mine. My name. My bank. My money. I clicked over to Venmo and scrolled through Emily's recent transactions. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe nothing. But I found it anyway. To Brianna, bridesmaid note. His mom's paying, might as well go big. Wedding vibes. The blood drained from my face. The air in the room thickened. My money. My name. Used like a credit line they didn't have to earn. Like I was a faceless sponsor, a checkbook with no voice. I paid for it all because I loved my son, because I wanted him to have what I never could. But they saw me as background funding, not a person, not a parent. I closed the app. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the tablet across the room. I sat in the silence, staring at the faint outline of my reflection in the black screen. My shoulders didn't shake. My throat didn't clench. But something inside me, something foundational, shifted. Not like a crack. not like a break. A slow, grinding slide of stone against stone. The first cut wasn't the dress or the speech or the chair in the kitchen. It was the signature they used without asking, the trust they spent without blinking. I reached for my phone and opened my emails. 3 short messages. One to the florist, cancel tomorrow's brunch order. One to the band. Second set, no longer needed. One to the bar vendor, do not staff the cocktail hour. Polite, direct, unapologetic. I hit send. By the time the sky outside turned from black to bruised blue, my hands no longer trembled. My breathing had slowed. The woman who paid for the wedding had done enough. It was time to let them feel what absence really looked like. I hadn't slept, not a second. My dress was still hanging over the back of the chair, wrinkled and sour with kitchen grease. The hotel room hummed with silence, broken only by the distant rattle of the elevator shaft and the tick of the bedside clock. 2:03 a.m. I sat on the edge of the bed, the air thick around me, and suddenly I knew what I needed to do. Not call, not write, not cry. I needed to know. I stood, walked barefoot to my suitcase, and pulled out the small leather envelope pouch I always traveled with. Inside, tucked between receipts and old insurance forms, was the letter. The envelope was soft at the edges, worn from age. His handwriting stretched across it in blue ink, Michael's unmistakably his. I had found it after his funeral, hidden in the back of the dresser drawer, sealed unmailed. I hadn't opened it then. Couldn't. I was too raw, too angry, too busy trying to keep Daniel whole. Back then, the truth felt dangerous. Now, it felt necessary. I peeled the flap slowly. The paper inside had yellowed slightly. The first line hit like a slap. Leora, I know you never wanted to hear from me again, but I need to tell you something. My throat tightened. Daniel isn't biologically yours. I stared at the words until they blurred. He continued, Emily was already pregnant when we got together. I thought I could raise him like he was mine, and when you and I got married, I lied. I told you he was ours. I told you it was a mistake from before. I let you carry it all, and I never corrected it. The page trembled in my hands. You raised him better than I ever could have. I see that now. You made a life for him, gave him everything. But I couldn't take it with me, this lie. You deserve to know. You deserve peace. There was more. Regret, apology, excuses dressed up like closure. I read it all. Every word. Then I folded the letter neatly and placed it on the nightstand beside the untouched slice of wedding cake. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even shaking. The pain wasn't sharp. It was quiet. Settled deep, the kind that changes the shape of you without making a sound. I had raised a boy that was never mine, and still, I had called him son. I turned off the light and sat in the dark, letting the truth sit beside me, like a guest that had always been in the room. I didn't cry when I woke up. Not when I made coffee. Not when I stepped into the shower and washed off the stale perfume and fried garlic that had soaked into my skin. I dressed slowly. Jeans, a pale blue button-down. No makeup. No mascara to smudge. No foundation to hide the truth. I sat at the edge of the hotel bed, the letter still on the nightstand, opened and folded once like it wasn't a bomb. Like it wasn't a life sentence handed down too late. My phone buzzed again, 4 more messages, all from Daniel. I didn't read them. Not yet. Instead, I reached for my tablet, pulled up the wedding planning spreadsheet, the one I had built cell by cell over the past 18 months. There it was, every vendor, every payment, the florist, the caterer, the band, the brunch. I knew it all by heart. The open bar was scheduled until midnight. I had added that at Emily's insistence, even after she rolled her eyes during our tasting meeting and said, "It'll be embarrassing if we run out of gin before the dancing even starts." I had nodded then, smiled, paid the deposit without question. Now I reached for the phone. No hesitation, no trembling. The first call was to the florist. Hi, this is Leora Langley. Yes, regarding Sunday's brunch delivery. I'd like to cancel the remaining arrangements. Please consider the order closed. There was a pause. But ma'am, I understand the policy. The balance is not to be charged further. Thank you. Click. The second the band. Due to scheduling changes, the second set will no longer be necessary. Yes, I'm aware it's last minute. Yes, I'm aware the deposit is non-refundable. This is not a request, it's a confirmation. Click. And finally, the bar extension. This is Leora. I'm calling to cancel the extended service tonight. No second bartender, no signature cocktails, no late-hour service. The manager cleared his throat. Is there an issue, Noma Beat? Just a change of heart. Click. 3 calls, 3 quiet cuts. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't offer reasons or apologies. I didn't need to, because it was never about drama, never about revenge. It was about recognition. And the one person who owed me the most couldn't even say my name in his wedding toast. I stared out the window as I powered off my phone. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was electric, alive. They had written me out of their story. But they forgot who paid for the book. By late morning, the messages had stopped flooding in. The silence was louder than the constant buzzing had been. I sat at the desk in my hotel room with a cup of coffee cooling at my elbow and my tablet propped open. The spreadsheet stared back at me, neat columns, tidy rows, numbers that added up to more than I'd ever thought I could give. I scrolled to the first entry, the initial deposit on the venue. My hand shook slightly when I wrote that check, knowing how many years of work it represented. I remembered Daniel's voice over the phone afterward, quick and clipped. Thanks, Mom. This means a lot. He didn't know that I had sold off the last of Michael's old tools from the garage just to make up the difference. And now, as I sat there, that line item felt like a monument to my own foolishness. I opened the photo gallery on my phone. There it was, the image I had taken for my records. The check, written out to the venue. My signature scrawled at the bottom, bold and permanent. Proof. I uploaded it to Facebook. No caption, no context, just the photo. I set the phone down and let the silence breathe. The first comment came within minutes. An old colleague from the hospital. You're too generous, Leora. Always have been. Then another. A neighbor from years ago, I hope they thanked you properly. You deserve to be celebrated. The comments piled up. Most were from people who knew me, who had watched me patch together a life after Michael left, who knew the weight of every dollar I gave. They didn't need an explanation. They understood the language of sacrifice written in pen and numbers. Some asked questions. What happened? Why post this? But even those weren't sharp. They were curious, concerned, not judgmental. No one judged. I scrolled through the names people I hadn't spoken to in years. Their words weren't flowery. They weren't even long, but they steadied me. I hadn't realized until that moment how starved I'd been for anyone to see me. The photo wasn't about money. It was about presence, about proof that I had been here, that I hadn't been a ghost in the corner of my own son's wedding. The phone buzzed again, this time with a private message. It was from Claire, an old friend from the ER, someone who'd slipped coffee into my locker during back-to-back shifts decades ago. I saw your post. I know you don't want pity, so I won't offer it. Just tell me when to come over. I'll bring wine. You don't need to sit in this alone. I sat back, the tightness in my chest, loosening just enough for me to breathe deeper. I typed back, not today, but soon. I closed the app, placed the phone face down, and picked up the letter again. It waited on the nightstand. Michael's words curling through me like smoke. I unfolded it one more time, my eyes tracing the same brutal line, Daniel isn't biologically yours. The photo had reminded me I wasn't invisible. The letter reminded me why I had let myself become invisible in the first place. I folded the paper again and slid it back into the envelope, my hands steady, my jaw set. The world outside could think what it wanted. Inside this room, I was already rewriting the ending, and the first person who would feel it wasn't a stranger on Facebook. It was Daniel. The phone wouldn't stop. Calls, voicemails, texts, each one a different tone of panic, irritation, or thinly veiled rage. I listened to the first few just long enough to understand the pattern. Daniel's voice was tight, sharp with embarrassment. "Mom, what are you doing? Posting checks online? Canceling things last minute? You're making a scene. Everyone's talking about it. Emily's furious. Just call me back so we can fix this before it gets worse." I let the message play out, his voice rising at the end like he was the one wounded. Then another message followed immediately after. Emily's mother. "Leora, I don't know what's going on with you, but this is incredibly unprofessional. Vendors are showing up confused and guests are asking questions. If you were unhappy with something, you should have addressed it earlier. This kind of behavior is beneath you. Beneath me." As if sitting in the kitchen with a paper napkin for a name card wasn't. I deleted both messages without replying. The next one came from Susan. Again, more clipped this time, like she was trying to mask her panic with control. "We'll pay you back for whatever expenses you're upset about. Just stop interfering. You're ruining what should be the happiest weekend of their lives." The words sat heavy in the air. Pay me back. As though this was about dollars. As though a reimbursement could replace the look on Daniel's face when he laughed at her father's toast and never once searched for me in the crowd. More messages came in, each one piling onto the last. Friends of Emily, distant relatives, even Daniel's college roommate who barely knew me. They all said the same thing: stop, come back, make this right. Not one of them asked if I was okay. I turned the phone over so the screen faced the desk and pressed down until the buzzing stopped. The silence that followed was thick, almost alive. For the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't feel compelled to answer. I didn't feel obligated to smooth things over to make everyone else comfortable. I had been their wallet, their sponsor, their reliable yes. Now that the wallet had closed, they finally felt my absence, and I wasn't in a hurry to soften the edges. I poured myself another cup of coffee and sat by the window. The street below was quiet, early sunlight, casting long shadows across the parking lot. I watched people load their cars, children climbing into back seats, suitcases rolling across the pavement. Life going on unbothered. I sipped slowly, letting the bitterness coat my tongue. It steadied me. This was what it felt like to reclaim space. Not loud, not violent, just firm. Just final. The phone buzzed once more, insistent, a reminder of the chaos I'd left behind. I didn't reach for it. Instead, I folded Michael's letter again and slid it into my purse. There was still more truth waiting to be faced, and I knew exactly where to find it. By the time I zipped the bag shut, I already had a plan for what I needed to do next. The florist was supposed to arrive at 7:45 a.m. 2 delivery vans, dozens of centerpieces, floral runners for the buffet tables, and a standing arch of roses for photos. But nothing came. Not a single bud. I imagined the silence in that banquet room as guests stepped inside and found white tablecloths stripped bare. No color, no scent. Just hollow space where my money was supposed to bloom. Emily would have noticed first. She's the type who spots a smudge on a wine glass from across the room. Her voice would have pitched up, not in panic, but in performance. "Oh, I think there's a delay," she probably chirped. "Must be a mix-up with the vendor." Daniel would have nodded along, offering his stiff little smile that means he's not sure what's happening, but he'll follow whatever script she writes. I wasn't there to see it unravel. I didn't need to be. Instead, I sat on my porch with a fresh mug of coffee. Black. Strong. No sugar. The breeze was cool and the sunlight slipped over the edge of the neighbor's roof like honey. A bird landed on the railing and pecked at a leftover crumb from my toast. I'd never noticed how quiet Sundays could be. No clock ticking, no checklist humming in the back of my head. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to make something beautiful for someone else. I wasn't frosting a cake or folding napkins or polishing glassware. I was still. By 9:15, my phone buzzed. I didn't reach for it. I didn't even glance. I let the screen light up and dim again. Later, I saw the texts. Daniel. Hey, do you know what happened with the flowers? Emily, your florist, totally ghosted us. So unprofessional. Did you confirm everything Susan Emily's mother left a voicemail that started with Hi Leora? We're just a little confused, and ended with her asking if perhaps I'd missed a payment. Missed a payment. As if this whole charade hadn't been propped up by my bank account from day one. I took another sip of coffee. The birds were still there too now, chirping, shifting, unbothered. They didn't care if the centerpieces never arrived. Neither did I. By mid-morning, I opened the folder again. The one from my dresser. The letters sat quietly on the kitchen table as if they had always been waiting for this exact kind of morning. A still one. A real one. I reread every line. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to remember who I had been, who I chose to be, before anyone told me my love had to look a certain way. Before wedding themes, before seating charts, before being reduced to a transaction. I had loved Daniel more than anything, and he had spent that love like it came with no cost. I closed the folder and slid it into a drawer near the sink. Not hidden, not locked away, just no longer center stage. The smell of garlic from last night's dinner still lingered faintly in the air. It made me smile. It was my house, my kitchen, my coffee. My peace. Around 11, I heard a car engine slow outside. Tires on gravel. Then a door slamming. I stood up, set my mug down gently, and walked to the window. The car outside wasn't familiar. It slowed, hesitated, then pulled away. Maybe a lost delivery. Maybe someone coming to knock, then thinking better of it. Either way, it didn't stop. When the quiet returned, I walked back inside and opened the drawer again. I hadn't expected to feel so calm around those letters. The first one had gutted me, but in the hollow, it left something else had settled. Something sharper. Something still. I sifted through the folder slowly. Most of it was old paperwork, insurance forms, tax documents, a few birthday cards from co-workers I'd long since forgotten. But near the bottom, folded twice and tucked behind an envelope from the DMV, was another letter. Same handwriting. Same slant. Michael's. It wasn't in an envelope, just the letter itself. The paper thinner, more fragile than the first. Margaret, it began. If you're reading this, I guess the first letter reached you. I don't know if you opened it. I hope you did. I won't waste time apologizing again. I need to tell you something more. Something I should have said a long time ago. I sat down. The words didn't shake in my hands this time. Daniel wasn't just someone else's son. He was never supposed to be yours at all. I read it again to make sure I hadn't misunderstood. But the words stayed the same. Cold, plain, final. Emily left him with me. She was 18, terrified. She didn't want to keep him. She begged me to handle it. Said she couldn't be a mother. I told her I would take care of it, but I couldn't give him up. I told you he was ours. That it had happened before we married. You believed me. You raised him. You loved him like he was flesh of your flesh. I put the letter down and pressed my palms to the table. My breath was steady. I remembered those early years. The exhaustion, the night feedings, the scrapes and fevers and laughter that filled our small apartment. None of it had been mine to begin with. Not by blood, not by birth. A girl I'd never met had left a child on my doorstep, and I'd built a life around him like it was the most natural thing in the world. Because it was. I picked the letter back up. You were the only one strong enough to do what she couldn't. I know I should have told you. I was a coward. But I was also right. Daniel needed you. I needed you. I just didn't know how to stay. He signed it the same way he always signed things, just Michael. No love. No closing. The anger I thought I'd feel didn't come. What I felt instead was something close to clarity. Not peace exactly, but a soft understanding. I hadn't been chosen by circumstance. I had been chosen by someone who didn't have the courage to stay. And then I stayed. Through everything. I stood, folded the letter, and walked it over to the same drawer. I didn't file it behind anything this time. I left it on top. This wasn't a secret I needed to protect anymore. As I closed the drawer, the doorbell rang. Just once. Firm. Certain. I turned. I already knew who it would be. I wasn't looking for anyone. I just needed eggs, coffee, and silence. The kind of silence you find in a grocery store on a Tuesday morning when the aisles are half stocked and no one's in a rush. I turned the corner near the bakery, and there she was, Diane. She was holding a bag of flour and looking at it like it had personally offended her. Our eyes met at the same moment, and I saw it. The flicker of guilt, then the forced smile. Leora, she said, too cheerful. Hey. I nodded, placing a carton of eggs gently into my basket. Hi, Diane. She stepped closer, still holding the flour. You look, well. It was the kind of lie people told to avoid what they'd seen. I said nothing. She stood there, shifting her weight, trying to find the next sentence. I've been meaning to call, she said. I raised an eyebrow. Just at the wedding, I thought it was a mix-up, she said quickly. You sitting back there. I thought maybe you'd been moved temporarily, that they'd come get you later. I looked at her. No. It was a decision. She froze. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't logistics, I said calmly. They planned it that way. Diane's face flushed. She looked down at the flour bag in her hands like it might offer an answer. I should have said something. I should have come to you. I didn't want to cause a scene. They were counting on that, I replied. She winced. I'm sorry. For a moment we stood there in the middle of the baking aisle, like two women who'd just walked out of different storms and landed in the same puddle. I told Susan off the next morning, she said. Said it was cruel. She shrugged. Said you were overreacting. That sounds like her. She also said you didn't understand weddings at this level. Diane made air quotes, then rolled her eyes. I laughed, short and bitter. Sure, because understanding how to be discarded is apparently an art. I meant to come over to you that night. I did, but I didn't want to get in the middle of anything. You weren't in the middle, I said. You were on the edge, like me. You just got a better seat. Her shoulders dropped. You're right. I reached for a bag of coffee beans. The good kind. The kind I used to buy before I started budgeting around floral centerpieces and custom menus. I saw your post, she said suddenly. The check, the signature. I nodded. Felt like the only way to remind them who paid for the party. A lot of people are talking, she said carefully. Some are upset. Most aren't. I'm not interested in controlling the narrative, I said. I'm just done letting them write it for me. Diane nodded slowly. Well, I think you were right to do it. I really do. Thanks. She hesitated, then reached out and gently touched my arm. If you ever want to talk, or just sit somewhere that's not behind a swinging kitchen door. You've got me. That more than anything caught me off guard. Not because I needed it, but because someone offered. Thanks, Diane, I said. And I meant it. We parted at the end of the aisle. She turned toward checkout. I headed toward the freezer section. Back at home, I put the groceries away, washed my hands, and walked to the living room. I passed the fireplace mantel where all the family photos used to be. Every frame was gone. I didn't miss them. I sat down, opened my laptop, and typed a name into the search bar. Someone I hadn't thought about in years. The thing about being overlooked is that people start forgetting you hold the pen. I stared at the laptop screen, then opened the folder labeled Documents. Inside it were PDFs, scans, receipts, every contract I had signed over the past year. The florist, the band, the venue, the decorator. Even the invoice for the neon sign that now sat glowing behind their head table like some Instagram altar to entitlement. All of it had my signature, my address, my payment information. None of them had ever asked who was footing the bill. They just assumed. I clicked open the wedding budget spreadsheet. Column after column of costs. I remembered how careful I was. How I tracked every cent down to gratuities and chair covers. How I said yes when I wanted to say, "Are you sure you need that?" Because I didn't want Daniel to feel like he had less than what she dreamed. Every check, every deposit, my name, the house deed too still in my name. They'd moved in for a few months last year just to save up, and every time I mentioned a lease or boundaries. Daniel had smiled and said, "We trust you, Mom." Of course they did. I opened the bank app. There was still the emergency fund. Quiet, untouched, built from decades of skipped vacations and clearance rack sweaters. I'd always told myself it was for a real emergency. I just hadn't realized until now that the emergency was me. They'd planned the entire wedding like I didn't exist beyond the digits of my routing number. Every vendor addressed emails to Emily. Every creative call went to her phone. I was the guest contact in small print and afterthought. They used my resources like a communal fountain, never once stopping to wonder what powered it, or who would shut it off. I leaned back in the chair and let the silence stretch. The house hummed around me, that low, familiar vibration of refrigerator coils, a soft rattle of the wind through the vent, the creak of wood adjusting as the day warmed. It was the first time I'd noticed it in weeks. No one had ever asked whose name was on the florist's final payment. No one had thought to thank the person who paid for the 5-tier cake they posed beside. The same cake I never even got to taste. Not once had Daniel asked if any of it was hard for me. Not when the costs doubled, not when I picked up extra shifts, not when Emily emailed me at midnight with just one more idea. They thought silence meant ease. They thought convenience meant consent. I opened the drawer next to me and pulled out the envelope with my lawyer's letterhead. I'd never mailed it. Hadn't even filled it in. But now I removed the draft and scanned it with a new clarity. Durable power of attorney rescinded. Emergency fund restricted. House deed not up for discussion. The pen felt heavy in my hand, but I signed it anyway. Leora Winslow. It was the first time I'd written my name for me in a long, long time. I slid the letter back into its envelope and placed it at the front of the drawer. Easy to find when the time came. Then I stood, walked to the window, and watched a squirrel dart across the porch railing like it owned the place. And for once I didn't feel like the ghost in my own home. I turned from the window, walked into the kitchen, and opened the yellow notepad sitting on the counter. The knock came at 10:12 a.m. I didn't need to look through the peephole. I knew the shape of him. Daniel. I opened the door slowly. He stood there, eyes rimmed red hair, unkempt, the nervous tremble in his jaw I'd seen 100 times before. When he failed a test, lost a job, ended a relationship. But this wasn't that kind of shame. This was deeper. His gaze moved past me into the living room. He stepped over the threshold without waiting for an invitation. The silence stretched between us like a hallway we didn't know how to walk. Then he said it. "Why are the photos gone?" I didn't answer. I walked to the kitchen and motioned toward the table. "Sit." He sat slowly, hands resting on the edge like he didn't trust the furniture. I opened the drawer and pulled out the letter. Not the first one, the second. The one with his father's unmistakable slanted script. I placed it in front of him and waited. He didn't touch it at first, just stared like it might explode. "What is this?" he asked. "You should read it." He picked it up, unfolded it carefully. His lips moved as he read, but no sound came. His eyes scanned faster, then slower. He reached the end and started again. When he finished, he lowered the page onto the table like it weighed more than he could carry. His voice cracked. "You knew I'd do now." He looked up at me, but I didn't meet his eyes. "So, all this time?" He lied. I wasn't even. He paused like the word "yours" burned his tongue. "You were mine," I said firmly. "You still are. But that doesn't mean what you did didn't hurt." He flinched. "You sat there and let them erase me, Daniel. You watched it happen. And you said nothing. You watched them seat me by the kitchen. You watched them call someone else family. You didn't even glance back." He swallowed hard. "I didn't think you'd be so upset." I stood then. That was worse than forgetting, assuming I had no right to feel. I walked to the mantel and picked up an empty frame. This used to hold a photo of you first day of middle school. You had a cowlick and a Batman lunchbox. You were beaming. That morning, I ironed your shirt while burning my own toast because we were running late. I turned the frame over and set it down. "You think this is about a chair?" A program mention. "It's about being invisible at something I built." He put his head in his hands. "I messed up." I sat down across from him. "Yes, you did." He wiped his eyes with the heel of his palm. "What do I do now?" I didn't answer. I couldn't give him that. Not this time. Instead, I stood up, walked to the sideboard and pulled out a box. It was filled with receipts, checks, confirmations, all with my name. I placed it in front of him. "What's this?" "The wedding. Every dollar, every decision, every detail." He opened the lid and stared. "You wanted a castle," I said, "so I gave you one. And you locked me in the kitchen." He didn't respond. I moved toward the hallway, leaving him at the table. His eyes followed me, desperate, but I didn't look back. I stepped into the next room and opened the closet door. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw anything. I just stood there, the closet door open, my hand resting on the edge of the shelf like it might hold me upright. Behind me, I heard Daniel shift in his seat, the scrape of the chair legs against the wood. I didn't turn. "You let them push me out," I said steady. No response. "You let them seat me in the kitchen, like I was hired help, like I was an afterthought. You let them erase me. And then I finally turned around, you stood there smiling, and never once said my name." He looked up slowly. His eyes were wet, but I felt nothing. I had cried my tears. I had bled quietly into my pillow and into every account I emptied for his future. Now I was dry. Clean. I didn't know it would be like that. He said, his voice small. "Emily said the seating was complicated. That the photos had to—" "No," I said sharply. "Don't. Don't you dare lay this on her like you weren't there. Like you didn't know I wasn't seated with family. Like you didn't see where they placed me." He opened his mouth, then closed it. I took a deep breath, exhaled slowly. I bought that wedding, Daniel. Every single minute of it. And in return, I got 30 square inches of stained floor and a folding chair. I didn't mean, but you did nothing to stop it. I cut in. That's what hurts. Not Emily. Not her parents. Not the band or the missing flowers. You. He stared at the box on the table. The letter beside it. "I loved you," I said quietly, fiercely, without pause. "You were mine in every way that mattered. I raised you when no one else would. And all I asked, truly, all I hoped for, was that one day you'd look at me and say, 'This woman made me.'" I stepped closer to him now. Not to threaten, just to be heard. But you didn't. Not once. Not during the speech. Not in the program. Not when they called you the luckiest man alive and thanked her for raising you. He blinked fast, his jaw twitching. "I didn't know how to fix it," he whispered. "You don't fix this," I replied. "You carry it. You live with it. You learn from it if you're wise." He looked down again and I watched him shrink into himself. Still no apology. just the ache of realizing he had run out of chances. I didn't shut you out, I said. You did that yourself. He nodded slowly. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I walked over and placed my hand gently on his shoulder. Don't come back here expecting me to be who I was, I said. She's gone. She left with that folding chair. I stepped away back into the kitchen. Behind me, the front door creaked open. And then quietly, it shut. The box wasn't heavy, not in the physical sense. It was shallow and cardboard worn soft at the corners from being shoved under the bed and pulled out too many times. But in my arms, it felt like a ledger for everything I had swallowed, paid for, tolerated. Daniel sat at the edge of the couch, his hands slack between his knees. His eyes darted to the floor, to the box, to me, anywhere but where the truth actually sat. I placed it on the coffee table in front of him. These are yours now. He blinked, confused. I didn't elaborate. Inside were vendor contracts, printed email threads with urgent or please confirm in the subject lines. Screenshots of Venmo notes from Emily and her bridal party. One read, LOL, his mom's paying anyway. I had printed it in color. The check for the custom neon sign still wrinkled from being crammed into my planner. The invoice from the florist, the full payment for the band, both halves, the catering upgrade, the dress fitting deposit for Emily's gown, the one I wasn't even invited to attend. Each item had its own tab. You kept all of this? He asked finally. Yes, I said. Not to throw in your face. To remember. To hold myself accountable. He ran his hand over the top of the pile, fingers pausing on the copy of the dress receipt. She said her mom paid for the alterations. She didn't, I said plainly. You'll find the transfer confirmation under bridal gown final. His mouth opened, then closed again. I didn't do this to humiliate you, I added. I did it so you can stop pretending you didn't know who made that day happen. He picked up one paper, then another. Didn't speak. I kept thinking, maybe at some point, one of you would stop and say thank you, or even just see me, not as a wallet, not as a placeholder, as the person who made everything possible while sitting behind the kitchen. Daniel's eyes filled, but I didn't move to comfort him. Now you have it all, I said. Proof. Receipts. Reality. I walked to the door. My hand rested on the knob for a long moment before I turned back. This is the last thing I'll ever give you. He looked up, startled. I opened the door, not because I stopped loving you, but because I finally started loving myself. He stood holding the box, his shoulders small beneath it. And then I closed the door. The table was mine again. For once there were no linen rentals or place cards written in calligraphy, no aesthetic themes, no folded napkins that matched anyone's dress. Just the blue tablecloth I found on sale last month, sunflowers stitched across its seams, and the chipped white dishes I'd had since Daniel was in middle school. I made the pasta from scratch. My hands moved without thought, flour dusting my apron, olive oil warm in the pan, garlic hissing softly when it met the heat. I didn't rush. No one was waiting to be impressed. Claire arrived, first bottle of red in one hand, her other arm wide open for a hug. You look good, she said, and I did. No Spanx, no foundation. Just me. Mr. Henderson showed up next, a peach cobbler in a foil dish and a sheepish grin. I don't know if it's any good, he warned. Didn't have nutmeg, he winked. Used extra cinnamon instead. Nurse Janet was last still in scrub's hair pulled into a messy bun. I was gonna change, she said breathless, but I thought, why bother? This is the good version of me. We filled the small living room with noise. Real noise. No DJ. No speeches. Just overlapping voices and the clatter of cutlery and the kind of laughter that comes from stories you've told before, but love telling again. Mr. Henderson made everyone laugh so hard, they cried, recounting the time he locked himself out of his house in boxers and a baseball cap. Claire kept refilling everyone's glass, humming a song no one recognized. Janet piled her plate 3 times and claimed it was all in the name of carb loading for the night shift. I moved through the kitchen easily. No one told me to sit down. No one told me to stand up. I carried plates. I passed bread. I smiled. And when dessert was finished and the last of the wine was nearly gone, Claire raised her glass. "To choosing yourself," she said. Her eyes were soft. Her voice held no pity, only warmth. They all clinked their glasses. I raised mine, too. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt here, present, alive. And when the laughter had settled into a soft hum and the porch light clicked on outside, I stood up to start the coffee. The morning after the dinner, the house was quiet, in a way that didn't sting. No footsteps above my head. No voicemail. Blinking red. Just the faint scent of garlic in the air and the echo of laughter still tucked into the corners of each room. I stood in the living room and stared at the wall across from the couch, the one Daniel's graduation photo used to hang on. The glossy frame with the gold border. His smile-wide cap tilted just a little tassel crooked from my hands, fussing with it before he walked that stage. I took it down. I didn't rip it from the nail. I didn't hurl it across the room. I held it like it mattered once because it did, and then I turned it over and opened the back. I slid the photo out carefully, folded it in half, and placed it in the empty cardboard box beside me. No tears, just breath. One by one, I moved through the house. The picture from his 5th birthday party with the plastic dinosaurs on the cake. The one of him in the soccer jersey he hated standing next to me on the field after they lost the playoffs. The family Christmas photo where he wore the reindeer ears and scowled because I made him. I didn't throw any of them away. I folded each, gently wrapped them in old dish towels or tucked them between pages of old magazines to keep them from curling. Then I labeled the box in thick black ink memories, not obligations. The words looked right. I slid the box into the back of the hallway closet behind the coats I never wore and the boots I should have donated years ago. Not gone, just out of sight. When I stepped back into the living room, the walls looked strange. Not broken, just clean. Bare. Like they were waiting for something else. Something new. I picked up the tiny framed watercolor of a pair I'd bought at a street fair last fall. A silly little thing, but I liked the colors. It had been in the kitchen behind the spice rack. I hung it in the hallway. Then the photo of me and Claire from a camping trip 10 years ago, our faces flushed, our hair damp from river water. I dusted it off and gave it the spot above the bookshelf. By noon, the walls weren't empty anymore. They were mine. I didn't expect anyone to say anything. That post, just the check, my signature, no caption, wasn't meant for attention. It was a record, a receipt of who I had been to him. But somehow it traveled further than I thought it would. The first message came from Ann Parker, Daniel's 3rd grade teacher. She found me on Facebook. Her message was short, but it stopped me cold. I saw the photo. I always wondered why you looked so tired at parent-teacher nights. Now I know. You were doing it all alone. And you were always kind. I'm sorry he forgot. I read it twice, then a 3rd time. I hadn't spoken to her in over 15 years, but she remembered me. Not for anything grand, just for showing up, for being there. Then came another message. Brian from the old hardware store Daniel used to bike to in middle school. He wrote, "You were always in here buying supplies for school projects and last-minute things. Always patient, always proud. I remember thinking you raised him right. Funny how people see you more clearly in hindsight." Emails started trickling in. Messages from old co-workers, neighbors, even a nurse I hadn't seen in years. I saw what they did. You didn't deserve that. I've thought about you all week. You were always generous, always strong. No one asked me to explain. They just offered pieces of the truth I'd tried to carry alone for too long. I sat at the kitchen table, coffee cooling in front of me, scrolling through them. Some came with stories, others with silence and just a heart, and somehow each one made something in me loosen. It didn't undo what had happened. It didn't rebuild what had been burned down. But it felt like someone had finally pulled the curtain back and seen what I'd been trying to hide. Even from myself, I was never invisible. They just never looked. Later that evening, I pulled out the yellow notepad. Again, the same one where I wrote the dinner guest list. This time, I started a different list. Names of people who had remembered me without prompt. People who reached out who reminded me of who I had been outside of the role I was discarded from. I titled it, People Who Saw Me Anyway. The list grew longer than I expected. By the end of the night, I closed the notepad and felt something shift. Not dramatic, not a roar, just a quiet weightlifting. I wasn't forgotten. I just needed to stop waiting for the wrong people to remember me. And the next morning, when I opened my front door, something unexpected waited on the porch. The morning didn't ask anything of me. I woke when my body was ready, not to an alarm, not to a to-do list, not to a voice in my head reminding me who needed what. I just woke, rolled over, listened to the hum of the house, and smiled. The linen shirt was still warm from the dryer when I slipped it on. No bra, no makeup. I didn't check the mirror. I didn't need to. The porch was already bathed in soft light when I stepped outside. Birds were picking at the feeder. The breeze tugged lightly at the hem of my sleeve. I brought my coffee with me, fresh, strong black. No sugar. Nothing to sweeten, nothing to mask. I sat in the old wicker chair, pulled my knees up, and rested my mug on the armrest. And just breathed. There was no buzzing phone, no distant obligation tugging at the edge of my mind. No list of people I might be disappointing. No silent panic about whether I'd done enough, said enough, given enough. For the first time in 30 years, I wasn't preparing. I wasn't managing. I wasn't smoothing over anything for anyone else's comfort. I was just here. A woman. Not a title. Not a role. Not a walking support beam for someone else's celebration. Me. I thought I would feel lonely. I didn't. I thought I might ache. I didn't. I only felt full, like someone who had finally finished a long, unfinished sentence. There were no flowers to arrange, no meals to coordinate. No expectations pressed against my ribs. No version of myself to mold for someone else's script. I took another sip. The coffee was bitter. Perfect. The trees across the street swayed slightly, the wind shifting them just enough to rustle. I could hear the newspaper boy's bike in the distance, the slow click of tires rolling over gravel. I leaned back. This was mine. All those years I had filled a house with needs that weren't my own, filled my silence with effort, my body with tension. For what to be invited halfway, conditionally, temporarily, not anymore. Now the porch belonged to me. The mug chipped at the rim, but still good. The quiet, the slow hours, the linen shirt that didn't need to impress anyone. All mine. And as the sun climbed higher, warming my bare arms, I realized this wasn't a break. This was a beginning. The guilt had always arrived before the second cup, but today it didn't show up at all. And when I heard another knock at the front door, I didn't rush to answer. I finished my coffee first. The table had seen it all. Years ago, I scrubbed Sharpie from its edge after Daniel's science fair poster leaked through the cardboard. Before that, it held spelling worksheets, multiplication flashcards, bowls of cereal abandoned mid-cartoon. One winter, he knocked over a full glass of milk in frustration because he missed the honor roll by a fraction. I didn't scold him. I just mopped it up with an old towel and made him grilled cheese. This table had carried scraped knees, broken hearts, late bills, early birthdays. It had always been ours. But tonight it was mine. I set it with quiet hands. A linen runner down the center. Cloth napkins folded once. mismatched silverware that didn't pretend to match anyone's expectations. A bowl of lemon pasta I made slowly with care, and one glass of red wine. No centerpiece, no placeholders, no waiting for someone else to lead the conversation. I lit a single candle and took the seat at the head. It felt right. For years I sat at the sides, the helper's place, the mother's perch close to the kitchen, easy to get up, refill, fetch, serve. I never questioned it. That was the role, right? Keep things warm, keep things moving, keep your voice low. But tonight I took the seat with the view, the one that had always faced the room. I ate slowly. I twirled my pasta, chewed each bite. I took a second serving without asking who else wanted more. I didn't speak to fill the silence. I let it settle around me like a soft shawl. There was no music playing, no other chairs scraped back, just the ticking of the wall clock and the occasional creak of the floorboards as the house adjusted to this new rhythm. I didn't miss the old noise. What I missed, what I was finally claiming, was the space to be still, to be enough on my own, to sit at the head of a table I paid for, filled, loved, and not need someone else there to justify it. After dinner, I rinsed my plate and left it in the drying rack. No stack, no pile. Just one clean plate ready for tomorrow. I turned off the kitchen light, walked back through the dining room, and paused. The candle flickered low. The chair pushed in. The table cleared. There had always been power here. I just hadn't claimed it before.